Hi, it's my pleasure to be speaking at the European Competitive Telecommunications Association HighSpeed 2010 conference. I'm sorry I can't be with you personally, but it's my pleasure to be able to present to you an update on the National Broadband Network in Australia. It's been a very exciting time for the network, the National Broadband Network, with the public release of the implementation study conducted by McKinsey & Co and KPMG. This study was commissioned by the government, and those organisations worked very closely with NBN Co to do a very detailed analysis of the National Broadband Network rollout. I'm really pleased to let you know that the implementation study confirmed the government's original estimated costings, as well as providing for an extremely comprehensive geospatial analysis of the build itself, including, importantly, the wholesale service cost of around $30 to $35 for a 20 megabits per second entry-level service on the National Broadband Network. So as you can see on this first slide, there's a series or a summary of very specific recommendations or outcomes from the implementation study. Please take a moment to read through them, because you can see they confirm some of the significant findings of the study. I think most importantly is the plan, the coverage and the extent to which the fibre to the premises National Broadband Network will reach. McKinsey found that not only was it possible to reach 90% of the Australian population with 100 megabits per second fibre to the premise network, but in fact they recommend we take that to 93%. They do this using their geospatial analysis of the actual build and recommend that the costs of that build are viable a little further, 3% more of the population. Further to that, the backhaul investment that is taking place is already underway. NextGen, a wholly owned company by Leighton Holdings, has already started building that backhaul network in black spots around regional Australia. And you can see a couple of photos here of trenches being dug, the minister out on the hustings promoting this build as it starts in many of our far-flung regions in Australia. The next slide shows population densities defined by the cost of deployment of the fibre. This is an important map because it illustrates how sparsely populated Australia is in that whole centre area, and how densely populated we are around our coastal regions, particularly on the east coast. This kind of analysis has been absolutely necessary to refine those costings as contained in the implementation study report. With the 93% recommendation by McKinsey, that leaves 7%. McKinsey go further to recommend that the next 3% be covered by a terrestrial wireless network, and then the final 4% by satellite, but under the new KA band when that's deployed in a couple of years' time. As people are probably aware, the government has foreshadowed a build over a period of 8 years, and progress to date has been very positive, particularly in our southern island state of Tasmania, where the rollout started far earlier. In Tasmania, there are 3 communities already where the backhaul has been completed, and they're going to stage 2 of the detailed rollout of fibre to premises in those 3 communities, with faster rollouts programmed over the next little while. Work is continuing in the planning of stage 2 rollout, which targets 7 more locations. On the 1st of March of this year, the government announced it would make a further equity injection into the NBN rollout in Tasmania of $100 million, and this will facilitate further rollout of fibre to the home across the state. This is stage 3 of the NBN rollout, and it will extend the delivery to 90,000 premises in Tasmania, in the major population centres of Hobart, Launceston, Devonport and Burnie. In addition, in Tasmania, in fact it was in March this year that the Minister officially opened the Mornington Proof of Concept Test Centre and announced the first retail service providers who will work with NBN Tasmania to deliver the broadband services, and their Australian ISPs Primus, Internode and iiNet. As I mentioned before, the Rudd government has also signed an agreement with NextGen Networks to construct new regional backbone links This backhaul investment includes $250 million of the Regional Backbone Black Spot program and is delivering the first building blocks of the NBN to the mainland. It will benefit around 400,000 people in more than 100 regional locations. In total, this program will see some 6,000 kilometres of backhaul network laid, with 600 kilometres completed already. As I mentioned, the first release sites on the mainland include suburban areas in Queensland, Victoria and the City of Melbourne, country New South Wales, a rural community in South Australia and coastal communities near Wollongong. One of the important aspects of the McKinsey Implementation Study report is that they identify the wholesale access price at around $30 to $35 for the entry-level 20 megabits per second service. This is terrific news. I'd also like to report back on some of the short and long-term financial issues. In this year's budget, importantly, the federal government issued the first round of Aussie infrastructure bonds to start to raise the capital needed for the National Broadband Network. $300 million worth of Aussie infrastructure bonds will be released over the next financial year. The government hasn't determined yet whether household investors will be able to purchase these bonds, and consideration is being given to this at the moment. Other investments that the government has made in this year's budget, and this, remember, it's on top of the original budget allocation of $4.7 billion in last year's budget, include an additional $15 million for the Department of Broadband Communications and the Digital Economy, $15 million for 4 years for continued support for the implementation of the National Broadband Network. This money will go towards funding policy and regulatory support for the rollout, and importantly, $24 million to the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission as the independent regulator of the National Broadband Network. $24 million over the next 5 years has been allocated. And this issue of independent regulation of the National Broadband Network is obviously central to the policy model we've proposed here in Australia for the National Broadband Network. It is a wholesale only open access network. The network itself will be independently regulated by the ACCC, as I said, and we currently have legislation before the Australian Parliament which codifies and formalises what that independent regulatory framework will look like. The bill is titled the Competition and Consumer Legislation Amendment Bill of 2010, and it's due to be debated in the upper house of the Australian Parliament in the coming weeks. I think importantly for the overarching financial implications for the Australian taxpayer, given this is a publicly funded investment, the peak estimated investment by government, McKinsey has at $26 billion by the end of year 7, of which $18.3 billion will be required over the next 4 years. This is an important figure because it represents, as I said, the peak government investment. McKinsey expect that the NBN company will be able to reinvest its returns to continue the capital rollout. Finally, it's important to stress the benefits of our fibre to the premises national broadband network. Not only will the network be able to provide guaranteed speeds, none of this up to of ADSL, these will be guaranteed speeds, so if you buy a 20 megabits per second service, that's what you will get on this fibre network. Importantly, for health, for education, for the community sector and for business, this economic infrastructure is an investment by the government for the long term. In summary, it's really gratifying for me to be able to sit here and say to you that the implementation study has confirmed all of the major assumptions that underpinned the government policy, particularly in the aspects of the reach of the network and the expected costs of the network. It demonstrates that not only is this proposal completely viable, but with the rollout already started, we're starting to get a really good feel of the sort of returns we can expect from the National Broadband Network. It is economic infrastructure, It's an appropriate way in which the government can invest in the future of our economy, both economically and socially. And I'm really pleased to have been able to share these details of our progress with you today.